There was something ominously bizarre about the fields that stood in front of me. Corn and untamed wheat glided brazenly amongst the wind. I reached out into the other. Yes, there was something there. The field. I saw in my mind's eye that it was covered in the unmistakable crimson aura of the other. We do not live alone in this world. Around us, just beyond the sight of what we are willing to believe, is an uncharted secret lair. A realer, more colourful world is just beyond the reach of all of us, and yet we choose not to believe. We are surrounded by spirits. We are encircled by demons, by the bones and ruins of long-dead things we don't believe in anymore. Once upon a time, the world was a more colourful place, back when we truly believed and could see it for what it was. But now we tell ourselves the things beyond the veil do not exist. I suppose that is why it is called the veil, perhaps, because we have chosen all but to forget the true world around us. There was a small town past the field, rather, in the centre of the field, a glaring hole in the world, marked with the aura of death and something other. I walked into the town. Hello? I looked around to find nothing. Nobody. Anyone here? The town certainly didn't look empty per se. The lights were on in every house. Newly minted cars lined the streets every street or so, and yet, as I walked, I saw no sign of life. I saw an open bakery and walked into it. Gentle, discoloured music drifted from a small Bluetooth speaker as I observed the fresh hot bread dotting the place. Hello? I yelped as I touched a single piece of bread. The sound of insects, flies buzzing, filled my head. I stepped back, dropped the bread, spilling crumbs all over the floor, and caught myself on a stand. Something unnatural was wrong with the town. Something powerful enough to break through my mental guard. "Okay," I murmured, gently cursing under my breath. I realised nobody could hear me, and I swore louder. It was only natural. I found my silverback gloves out of my backpack and slipped them on. I realised I was hungry, seized a rather delicious-looking piece of apple pie, chanted a simple cleansing spell, and took a bite. Effective enough. It tasted absolutely fine, despite the buzzing taste of the other. I tossed a $5 bill where I took the meal and wandered out of the store. The sun was setting now, about to vanish under the horizon. I decided I had two options: find a place to stay, or get the hell out of the weird, strange-infused town. I thought about it as I walked, and my mind, curious as ever, elected to investigate the source of the darkness. If it was manageable, I could purify it, remove its distasteful noise from the world. If not, I could report it to the proper authorities, despite the company's incompetence. In any case, I preferred to handle things my way. I reached out once again into the beyond, and closed my eyes. Yes, there was something there, a dark, fathomless mass in the centre of town, a short walk away. People gathered there, hands all caressing and shouting at something I could not yet place. I dredged through the empty streets of dying light, and eventually crossed a corner, quickly glimpsing the sight and pulling myself back into hiding. It was disconcerting to say the least. They were all there, parents, children, workers, loiterers, all there. What the hell? They were all watched by an old man in a robe I couldn't quite recognise. It was there, familiar, and yet unknown. There were 3 jagged rocks in the centre of their gathering. The centremost rock looked ominously like a face, and as I peered from where I hid, I could almost see it move, responding to the veneration of the townspeople. Most were gathered around the centre stone, but a sizable portion touched and caressed the other 2 stones flanking it, and while the first was a single massive face, they were adorned with smaller, writhing faces, giddy with joy and a sense of deep, unwavering malice. I watched the skies and found further evidence that something was going deeply wrong. Great dandelion-like blobs, visible to only those who could see. Whisperlings. The orb-like creatures, I remembered, fed on emotion, and a storm of thousands above the town only meant tragedy. I heard rustling behind me and turned, and felt a hand on my mouth. "Don't scream," she warned. A woman, older than me, fear and worry in her eyes. I didn't and remained still. "You need to come with—" She looked around, panicking. "Me, before they find you here." She glanced over at the unholy worship, then back at me. "What exactly is going on here?" I whispered, standing and following her. "Can't speak now," she muttered. "We need to get—" And then I heard the buzzing of 1,000 flies behind me. I stopped and looked back for a second. There was nothing in the air, and yet it was there. An unfathomable thing of strangeness and power, an otherworldly feeling of awe and fear that locked me into unseeing eyes. I attempted to move, but my spirit was being locked in place, the swarm of impossible insects starting to surround me. Out of the swarm of invisible flies came a deep, off-putting voice. "Canary," a voice intoned, slow and almost surprised. "There is a canary. Find her. Find the one who can see the world beyond." I felt a tug, and all at once I was broken from a spirit trance. "Are you okay?" the older woman practically interrogated. "What just happened?" "Did you hear that too?" I asked. "The buzzing of flies?" She looked at me, confused. "No? You were just locked there for a solid 5 minutes." Had it been that long? "We need to go!" There were others in the area now, coming from the stones. I could taste their, not exactly malice, but touch of something evil. But oddly enough, there was a semblance of something like hope, of freedom. And then we were in an apartment, one I had not noticed on the way into the cast town, and then up into an apartment room. I caught my breath and panted in exhaustion. "This entire place," I gasped, "sounds like death." She brought a finger to her lips. "Shh." And then a knock on the door. And then another. And then another. A voice, raspy and all at once, without regard for breath and pause. "Mother, are you in there? We wanted you to join us, but you did not come today. Have you been hiding in here? Please, please come join us tomorrow. I sense he will be appeased if you help us find the one who sees beyond the veil." We remained quiet, and then there was a voice of a young boy opposite the room, beyond the closed curtains that covered a window. "Mother, mother, please, please, please come out there. I've been waiting out here in the cold and frosty for so long. I'm scared. I do not want to be alone out here in the cold and dark." We were on the 5th floor. What the hell was out there? I reached into the other and it was something of great malevolence. Something ancient. The type of thing I encountered maybe once in a filling of bad years. A terrible omen. A celestial force of a something that should have died when its kind went extinct. And yet, the something, the thing that reigned over the town, clung on to dear life. Not all of the ancient, pre-celestial remnants were made of malice, although clinging onto lost life tends to accelerate the natural dissatisfaction of the world. I cast in my mind, why couldn't I have encountered some normal people-eater, or even one of the good pre-celestials? The deep, buzzing voice that unlocked me came back. "I sense the canary, the one who sees beyond." I severed the connection. We waited God knows how long in there, waiting for the thing and the man outside to retreat away. But it did happen. Time passed, and they disappeared back into town, for more worship of the strange kind. The woman breathed a sigh of relief. "You're lucky I'm still here. I was planning to leave today and get out of here." She peered out of the curtains, and I joined her, watching a procession parade the stones around town. "Canary," she looked at me. "Is that you?" I nodded. It's a rather defunct term of referring to people who can sense and see the world beyond. She looked a bit puzzled, but acceptant. "So, like ghost shit?" I shrugged. That is an adequate, if not blunt interpretation. I looked back out and studied the procession. "What has happened here?" She shook her head. "I don't want to talk about it. I just want to leave this damn place." She looked at me. "And you'd be smart to come with me." I nodded, agreeing. Still, I needed to know what the force terrorizing the town was. It was not so much curiosity as it was a need somehow. I need to know what happened here. If I do— "What? That you can fix it?" I nodded. "Hell no! Whatever that thing we summoned is It's far too powerful to mess with. So it was summoned. I have dealt with entities of similar power, I explained. I have been to the realm of the painter, the god of dreams. I have been to the Bandai Landan Whale Temple complex. If I know what has transpired here, I can fix this. I paused. To the best of my ability. Still, she was defiant. No, we need to go. Normally, I would drop the matter, leave, and leave a tip for the greater monster hunter community. But something was wrong here. Something I wasn't entirely sure. The buzzing of flies to corpses in the air. The feeling of dread and inevitable doom. An entity. Something either old or powerful. One that seemed to hold domination over me. If she would not divulge the answer, I would have to pull it out myself. You will. I reached into the other. Tell me what has happened. She pulled back mentally, a shield rising up, which caught me as odd. There was a slight buzzing to it. What are you doing? She feigned, stepping back. I won't tell you anything. Her voice, or her story, had a quality of the other to it. Something unnatural. With my free left hand, I reached into my bag and retrieved a rather intricately carved piece of whalebone. It was time for divine intervention. Bringer of lifeblood, teller of stories, keeper of dreams. The symbol upon the artifact lit up. I call upon your name, mother of the living world. Pray to see, divine whale. And the truth was revealed. It was the old guy, the woman shouted. Our town was dying. He told us we could bring it all back to the times we had as children. The truth flowed out like rain. He brought us to this cave north of town, and then he made us, the ones desperate enough to believe him, touch and worship the statue. I continued to pour truth, the strength of the star whale coursing through me, a rare artifact that amplified my powers, one that had taken a while to acquire. His name, and the name of that thing. She seemed to freeze, stop for a single second. I don't know. I redoubled my efforts. I can't seem to remember. This was oddly disturbing. What is your name? She froze and thought for a second. Martha. Your last name? She paused again. I don't know. Whatever had control of this town, I theorized, had the ability to erase the identity of those within. I shook my head. Never mind. What's with the thing at the window? What happened to your child? The buzzing was bark, interfering with my truth-seeking. Our children started to disappear after that, but money came back into town. Merchants, dealers, corporations. Life was starting to come back. I thought it wouldn't. She paused, stopping again. Happened to me. But it did. My son disappeared. There was more to it. And I took it up with the elder, she grasped. We did some sort of spell, and he came back. But he came back wrong. She paused, freezing in place once again. Something was happening here. I just couldn't exactly place it. He was cruel, evil. I had to hide away when a 6-year-old child, started to threaten me. He would appear at night with a knife in his hand. I concluded the assessment. And now you plan on leaving town? She nodded. Indeed. I released the carved bone and returned it to my bag. What? She said, confused. What just happened? There was too much amiss here. Too many details that did not seem to add up. I found my phone. Martha, what's the name of this place? I questioned. She did not seem to know. Neither did my phone's location feature. The place should not have existed. It was supposed to be only farmland, long ago abandoned. Aster, wasn't it? She began, her face now oddly different. No, it was straight up a different woman, one younger. Let's go look for my son and get out of here. I did not remember telling her my name. I thought you wanted to just leave. No, first we have to find my son. This wasn't right. Something was at play here, and I decided to play along. I sighed. Give me something of your son's. I was handed an old stuffed animal, now ruined by time. It too, like the rest of the town, smelled and sounded like death. I reached into the beyond and resonated with the toy. I sensed the presence of the sun out in the distance, towards the north, rather than the quick exit south. I had two choices: leave the woman, leave it all, or play into it and find the missing child. I elected for a third option. I wondered how the town would respond. "It's on our way out," I lied. "The cornfields." She smiled with empty eyes and took me downstairs, now devoid of the worshippers. She entered a car and drove, taking us to the southern field. The world seemed to reorient itself then, because I felt the presence of the sun inside the earth of the field the second we entered the area. She stopped the car. I got out, reached into the ether, and located the source of the presence. A shed I had not quite remembered, one I wasn't sure was there when I had walked into town. There were bones inside the shed, several skeletons, all fallen, eyeing me from beyond the grave. "I knew he was here in the north field!" She grasped and hugged the skeleton, small and frail. "Aren't we in the south field?" I pointed out. And then the skeleton wasn't a skeleton. The kid was still alive, and there were no other bones in the shed. "Thanks for helping us out, Aster." "No, this isn't right." I took a step back. She stepped forwards and blinked. "But it is right. You helped me, and now the story's over." She clapped. The buzzing was bark. I whispered a spell. Their true nature was revealing to me. Old bones, shackled together by the force of something else. This was when I ran. I ran until I couldn't run any longer, through the fields of corn and through the town, until I hit the plain road, There was something ominously bizarre about the fields that stood in front of me. Corn and untamed wheat glided brazenly amongst the wind. I reached out into the other. Yes, there was something there. The field. I saw in my mind's eye that it was covered in the unmistakable crimson aura of the other. I walked into town. "Hello?" I looked around to find nothing. Nobody. Anyone. I caught myself. Haven't I done this before? Yes. I had done this before. I was sure of it. And it all felt new to me. The town was different this time. It was more vibrant, but now it was no more the little modern ghost town, but instead something a bit older. The buildings were different, cracked yet new. A calendar set the time period, somewhere in the 80s. I turned on my phone. It glitched and ceased working. There were people abound in the old town, drifting from church to bakery to local shops, and back to church. The building had not been there before, and I remembered seeing the fallen debris of a long-dead building I had glimpsed. A man in a vest in 90-degree heat walked up to me. "You look new. You have to get out of town." There was worry in his eyes, but like before with the woman, there was a soft noise of buzzing. "He's always watching." "Who?" I intoned. This time, I knew full well whatever this was. It was a trick. A lure. Something to draw into a web of thought. "The Elder. He's made our town prosperous, but—" He looked around, panic-like. The buzzing grew louder. I remembered the story I had torn from the woman, the procession I had watched. "The stones," I murmured. "Take me to the stones." He took it well, ignoring the fact I should not have known about stones. "You're so right. Come with me." I continued to unravel the web. It wasn't hurting me, not in any way I noticed. It was merely placing me into events I theorized were artificial. Yes, the changing of the woman's face, the inconclusive, minimal, contradictory details. It was spinning and keeping me trapped in a very badly spun story. Now the question was why? I suddenly found myself at the stones. I hardly remembered the journey. "Quickly now, while we snuck past the guards," the vest man warned. "Destroy the stones." I found I had a pickaxe, glowing with lost sigils in my hands. The memories were distant, and I was already starting to... I'm forgetting. There was a blank look. No, you remembered your way here. You brought me all the way here." Memories, nearly true, appeared in my mind, and yet, as I reached into the beyond, I felt them full of a deathly buzz. There was a shadow behind us. and the shouting of men, and then blood emerging from the stones, a river of screams and wails. No! The screams grew louder. "You must," he warned, "or the beast will be released." The river of blood turned into snakes and began to twist and snarl at me. The noise of men continued to crescendo, and yet, as much as the snakes twisted and the shouts continued, nothing happened. "I know what this is," I snarled. "Tell me, how long have I been here, trapped?" My guide did not seem to respond. I sang a quiet spell. 2 days. I thought back on my mind, clearer, cutting out false memories from true. "You must end the stones, Aster. It is the only way," he shouted, "or none of us will be free." When was the last time I ate? Or drank, for that matter? It was devouring me, distracting and heightening my curiosity to keep me locked in a web of stories. Each tale, I assumed, would build upon the last, the lore of the woman and the stones being referenced here, in its founding. None of this was real, of course. I gathered. It was all too inconclusive. It needed me to remain compliant, to follow the story. This was how it kept its victims, how it gained power through the devouring of the weakened mind. "No!" I snapped. "The story ends now!" And I sat down, crisscrossed, closed my eyes, and wiped my mind of any interest I had in the tale of the nameless town and its stones of blood. When I opened them, I was in the middle of a field, long overgrown and unkempt. There was a table in front of me, a little model of the nameless town upon it, and on the other end, a child looking at me. "Why won't you—" Their voice was sweet, with the buzzing of flies. "Play with me." This was no child. A model of me and the townspeople sat on the model. "Make a move," the child told, smiling brightly. "You don't have to go back in there. Just play from out here." I raised a hand to move my piece, and then stopped. "No." The child looked concerned. "Why not?" they asked. "Because you are not a child. You've been devouring me, keeping me, like so many others." I could sense the dead, trapped. Like me. It smiled. "Don't you want to know how I was brought here? How I gained so much power?" It tugged at my curiosity, and for a single second, I almost lost it. "Don't you want to know who made me?" The carved whalebone appeared in my hand, waiting for me to draw out truth. I sat down and sighed. "No," and then swept the model off the table. "To ask you further would be to be drawn into your own story. I refuse to play your game." A look of terror came upon its face, and it screamed as the model fell, towers and churches and people upon the ground, turning into dust, and the dust spread out across the land, dozens upon dozens of model citizens spilling out into the field. And it was over. From the ground emerged light, 100 spirits trapped by the entity, 100 so slowly trapped as they grew curious, investigating, stopping the stones, forget to eat, drink, sleep, think for themselves. And the dead rose up as light from the earth and drifted upwards into alien worlds, into the light at the end of the tunnel, into places I dared not to look. The stalks of corn and wheat fell, revealing an innumerable, infinite number of crosses, graves, torn clothes and bones. Flies drifted from each and every body, laying eggs and feasting upon mummified flesh. I got up and started to walk. I dialed the police as I did, leaving an anonymous tip. I suppose it would end up unresolved, or maybe the thing that had devoured them all had devoured every sense of their identity, removing them from the world as a whole. I heard a noise and the cry of a child behind me, begging me for help. I stopped. I almost turned back. I walked away.